selection. I'm using Adobe After Effects, but it could be any of the others that was listed. So what we need to do is bring in the sample clip and add it to your timeline in some way, whichever way is appropriate. In After Effects, I can right click on it and I can do new comp from selection. And there is the item, and you can see that this is a full HD clip, 1920 by 1080, and it's 25 frames per second. And you can see it's a clip with lots of noise problems. Now the first thing to say is Neat Video needs to find a place in your video which is effectively just noise, or with very few features, or no features at all ideally, underneath it. Now this particular video has got quite large featureless areas in the sky with lots of noise. However, you do need to be careful because there are cables and wires which could be added into your profile. It's often useful to start off with to simply pull through and look through your video and see if you can find a frame which has got maximum noise and minimum features. Now here on this particular one, pretty much the last frame in fact, we've got huge areas which are also mid-bright with very visible noise. So they're not too dark, they're not too bright, they're mid-bright with lots of visible noise. Ideal place to start doing your noise reduction, because noise reduction works like this. Neat Video is going to analyze the noise in this area or wherever it chooses that's feature free, and then it can apply the profile it creates to the whole of the video, including areas with lots of features, and it will just then take away the noise and not any of the important details underneath it. It's a very advanced algorithm and works superbly well, but we do need to set it up. So the first thing you need to do is apply Neat Video to your clip. And you can do that in the normal way you would apply an effect inside of your application. In After Effects over here, I'm using my effects and presets. If you want to search for it, it's Reduce Noise version 4. If you have a previous version, it'll come up as Reduce Noise. Okay, so there's going to be a folder, a place where you can find Neat Video Reduce Noise 4, and you can apply that to your clip. Once it's applied to your clip, you're going to see that there are no controls now inside of the application. There will be, however, some way of creating a dialog box or opening up the settings. Inside of After Effects, I can choose Option or Prepare. There might be an icon, there might be a Build Noise Profile button, but there will be something associated with the effect that allows you to build your noise profile, and that's what you're looking for. I can click either of these, Option or Prepare. I'm going to click Prepare, and it tells me that this is a demo version for non-commercial purposes, but it certainly will work and show you how well Neat Video is going to deal with noise in your video. So I'm going to click OK, and up comes the dialog box. Now, because I'm on the last frame, the very last frame, I've got this NA here saying not appropriate, there are no frames. However, you can click backwards and forwards to find a better frame. So I might say go right back here and say I'm going to start with that frame because I think that's got all the areas that Neat Video is going to need to build a decent noise profile. So I found an area with very few features, lots of visible noise, and then all I simply need to do at this point is click this button here which says Auto Profile. Automatically builds a noise profile using the current video frame. And it's added one just here. Now, as I've said before, it's important to have an area with no features. It looks mighty close to that spire, so I need to zoom in to have a look. And the middle wheel on your mouse will allow you to zoom in and zoom out. And you can actually see, do you know what, that's not taken in that spire, but it has got lots of highly visible noise. And it's come up with a quality rating here saying it's about 70%. Now, don't get hung up on the quality rating. It's important to have a good selection. And if the quality rating is anything better than 60%, everything's fine. But if it's really low, go to the advanced tutorials because we can show you how to build a superb profile with very few areas which are noise rich and feature free. So don't worry if you're struggling with your own video, but in this one we can see we've got 70%. We can also move this, by the way. So if I hover over it, you see I've got the hand tool, and the hand tool will allow me to move it if I feel I need to. Now, when you move it, you'll see it goes to green, showing it's not the profile that Neat Video originally selected, but that's absolutely fine. You can move it to where you feel is appropriate, and if you do that, just click Auto Profile again, and the profile has been created. You don't need to click any of the other buttons, by the way. Fine tuning is automatically done when you click Auto Profile. These are to do with when you load your own profile, so you don't need to worry about these buttons. Okay, so now that we've got our selection made, it's not blue anymore, it is green simply because we moved it. We can now go to the noise filter settings and see how the default settings work. So if you go to noise filter settings, instantly you can see here it says we've got a filtered result. And if you click on the item, you can see over here, if I click on it, it says original, and when I let go, it says filtered. Original, filtered, and you can actually click to have a permanent view of original and a permanent view of the filtered item here. So you can actually get a feel for what it's like. And Neat Video's done a great job, as you can see, of getting rid of lots of the noise. However, you might not feel that it's enough. That's when you would move over to the filter settings over here, and you'll see that they're broken into three. We've kind of seen general before, which tells us about the actual clip itself, but also you'll see that there's temporal and there's spatial. And the default settings usually work really well, but if you feel that you need to increase the filtering to get a better result, it's usually better to start with temporal than it is to start with spatial. The reason being that temporal is going to be looking at the frames around your current frame to try and identify what is noise flashing in and flashing out of frame. So you can see down here we've got a really good indication of what's going on. You can see that this is the present frame we're on, and it's actually looking at the next two frames, and you can't see it here, but it would be looking at the two frames before to try and identify noise. And in fact, if I click here, it gives you a better idea. You can see the two frames before, this frame, and the two frames after are being used to set up what's called the temporal filter radius. You can see it says 2 here. And if you want to see how effective it's being, you can actually disable it. So that's the noise that's being got rid of simply by the temporal filter, which is looking at changes over time. If you want to increase this, you can simply click to increase. That's now 3. And click again, 4, or just use the slider, 5 frames. And you can see that it does make a difference. There's a little reset button here that will just take it back to its default setting of 2. So this is at 5, and that's at 2. And actually it does make a difference. The downside, of course, is if you go to 5, it's going to take longer to render, but it will give a better result. The alternative, if this isn't really the way you want to go, I'm going to stick it at 4, because I think that's quite good, is you can go to the spatial filter. Now, the way Neat Video works is it splits the video into chrominance channels, your red, green, blue, into 2 channels, and a separate luminance channel. So it's actually working in a different colour space. It's not RGB, this is YCBCR. And the reason for this is that the human eye is far, far more sensitive to changes in luminance than it is to changes in chrominance colour. So we can actually move the filters right up very high for changes in chrominance, but with changes in luminance we have to just change them a little to try and make quite a big difference. And if we start to move those up, you're going to start to notice those, and often you're going to notice those in terms of smoothing. So let's just turn this on and off. We can see the difference that spatial filtering is making. Okay, so that's the noise that's pretty much, we've taken all the noise that's in the red, green and blue, if you like, and we've also taken noise out at 40% on luminance. So if I turn that back on again, you can see the difference that that's made. It's quite significant. Now you can move it higher. As I say, it's better to start with temporal and take that as high as you can. You get a good result there. But if it's still not enough, you can move spatial up. Just be aware that when you move it up, you may get better results, but you may also add some smoothing to the end result. And if you feel it's too smooth, you do have the ability to enable sharpening, which we'll go through in a different tutorial. Right. Once you've actually done this and you're happy with the end result, I'm just going to go back. You can actually see that all of these frames, because temporal filtering, I've got 5, so it'll be 5 before the actual frame and 5 after. If I show you back here in the temporal filter, if I took it back to 4, you can see it would take the next 4, so you can actually see what's going on here. And leave it at 5, because that looks good. And dust and scratches is off, which we'll talk about in another tutorial. All I need to do now is simply apply it. And it tells me that this is a demo version of Neat Video. It will only process a maximum of 30 minutes of video data, and it's only going to filter 1280 by 720. And bearing in mind this is a 1920 by 1080 clip, you're going to see a sort of an area in the middle that's filtered and the rest isn't. and also it'll put Neat Video label on there. So I'm going to click OK, and we can see here is the filtered area, there's the label and the unfiltered area, and we can actually do a playthrough. I'm going to hit my spacebar because the process isn't too bad. Even though it's doing a lot of filtering, you can see actually it's doing about 3 frames per second, 3 to 4 frames per second on my system, which is pretty good because this system's a few years old now. And there are ways inside of Neat Video to improve the performance, by the way. So I'll show you that a bit later on. So that's a full playback. You can see what a massive difference it's making. So that's using Neat Video. Obviously, if I want to affect the whole screen 1920 by 1080, I need to buy the appropriate version. You can buy versions that will go up to 1920 by 1080. You can also buy versions that will go up to unlimited frame size, so 2K, 4K, 6K, whatever you happen to have. Neat Video will filter it. Obviously, the bigger the frame size, the longer the processing time.